Hello and welcome to The Knowing Show. I am your host, Christene Marie. I got on this morning and tried to connect via my hotspot, and it was janky and the signal wasn't working, but now I'm sitting with Wi-Fi and also sitting with just a reminder that I really, really, really believe that in these moments where things are not going the way that we expect, nor the way we want, it forces an encounter with us to reconcile with what do I fundamentally believe um, about the order of our experiences. And what I mean by that is I and my darling actually have cultivated this agreement, I guess you could say, around an outlook of how we view the world, which is which is framed in this narrative, which is this is for me. So that every time something goes wrong, this narrative, this is for me, actually really comes as kind of a boundary and a safeguard to make sure that I walk and live in alignment with a belief system I have already predetermined is one that I want to have guide my life, guide my actions, guide my mind and my thoughts. Because if I really believe this is for me and what happens if I'm walking in alignment and walking in accordance with who I was created to be, with honestly, like who I get to be and where I'm called to go, and I'm walking in that kind of straight and narrow path, then what happens and the encounters that I have along the way, I can really trust and believe that that's for me. And so then when the going gets tough and when I do run into those stumbling blocks, having that narrative, this is for me, helps me by way of serving as a boundary. I really do love this concept of having narratives and having them serve as bumper guards. When you go to a bowling alley, you've got your target, you've got your ball, and then you roll it towards the pins, but then your bumper rails help keep your ball from going into the ditch on its pathway towards the target. Our narratives and our internal belief systems are those bumper rails that guide us towards wherever we're going in life. And so this narrative, this is for me, really helps to ensure that I maintain my straight and narrow path on my way to wherever it is that I'm heading. And so as we go through this morning's or this afternoon's Course in Miracles, I really want us to think through what are the narratives that we hold around ourselves, around God, around this world, so that when we do encounter hiccups along the way, or even just moments of real pain, what are the belief systems that we fall back on that either bring us hope or can be the very things that actually are our demise? Sometimes our belief systems are the things that cause more pain than the thing itself in the external world, in the physical. Sometimes it is our own mind that can be more damaging than that which we encounter in our day-to-day life that can be really painful or challenging. So as we move through today's lesson, lesson 122 in A Course in Miracles, I just want us to have that awareness of thinking through what are the narratives that currently are set in place that serve as bumper rails, guardrails, as I live my life. Because whether we are aware of them or not, they exist. And so the goal is with this show is to become aware of the thoughts, mindsets, beliefs that are ultimately holding the microphone in our mind and in our life. When something goes right or something goes wrong, we have a narrative, we have a belief system that is helping shape our engagement with the world. And so with that, I am going to jump into lesson 122, and then we'll go ahead and read this together. Lesson 122, forgiveness offers everything I want. What could you want forgiveness cannot give? Do you want peace? Forgiveness offers it. Do you want happiness, a quiet mind, a certainty of purpose, a sense of worth and beauty that transcends the world? Do you want care and safety, the warmth of sure protection always? Do you want a quietness that cannot be disturbed, a gentleness that can never be hurt, a deep abiding comfort, and a rest so perfect it can never upset? All this forgiveness offers you and more. It sparkles on your eyes as you awake and gives you joy with which to meet the day. It soothes the forehead while you sleep and rests upon your eyelids so you see no dreams of fear and evil, malice and attack. And you wake again. It offers you another day of happiness and peace. All this forgiveness offers you and more. Forgiveness lets the veil be lifted up that hides the face of Christ from those who look with unforgiving eyes upon the world. It lets you recognize the Son of God and clears your memory of all dead thoughts so that remembrance of your Father can rise across the threshold of your mind. What would you want forgiveness cannot give? What gifts but these are worthy to be sought? What fancied value, trivial effect, or transient promise never to be kept can hold more hope than what forgiveness brings? Why would you seek an answer other than the answer that will answer everything? Here is the perfect answer, given to the imperfect questions, meaningless requests, half-hearted willingness to hear, and less than halfway diligence and partial trust. Here is the answer. Seek for it no more. You will not find another one instead. God's plan for your salvation cannot change, nor can it fail. Be thankful it remains exactly as He planned. Changelessly, it stands before you like an open door, with warmth and welcome calling from beyond the doorway, bidding you to enter and make yourself at home where you belong. Here's the answer. Would you stand outside while all of heaven waits for you within? Forgive and be forgiven. As you give, you will receive. There is no plan but this for the salvation of the Son of God. Let us today rejoice that this is so, for here we have an answer clear and plain beyond deceit in its simplicity. All the complexities the world has spun of fragile cobwebs disappear before the majesty and power of this extremely simple statement of the truth. Here is the answer. Do not turn away in aimless wandering again. Accept salvation now. It is the gift of God and not the world. The world can give no gifts of any value to a mind that has received what God has given as its own. God wills salvation be received today, and that the intricacies of your dreams no longer hide their nothingness from you. Open your eyes today and look upon a happy world of safety and of peace. Forgiveness is the means by which it comes to take the place of hell. In quietness, it rises up to greet your open eyes and fill your heart with deep tranquility as ancient truths, forever newly born, arise in your awareness. What you will remember then can never be described. Yet your forgiveness offers it to you. Remembering the gifts forgiveness gives, we undertake our practicing today with hope and faith that this will be the day salvation will be ours. Earnestly and gladly will we seek for it today, aware we hold the key within our hands, accepting heaven's answer to the hell we made, but where we would remain no more. Morning and evening do we gladly give a quarter of an hour to the search in which the end of hell is guaranteed. Begin in hopefulness, for we have reached the turning point at which the road becomes far easier. And now the way is short, that yet we travel. We are close indeed to the appointed ending of the dream. Sink into the happiness as you begin these practice periods, for they hold out the sure rewards of questions answered and what your acceptance of the answer brings. Today it will be given you to feel the peace forgiveness offers and the joy the lifting of the veil holds out to you. Before the light you will receive today, the world will fade until it disappears, and you will see another world arise you have no words to picture. Now we walk directly in light, and we receive the gifts that have been held in store for us since time began, kept waiting for today. Forgiveness offers everything you want. Today, all things you want are given you. Let not your gifts recede through the day as you return again to meet a world of shifting change and bleak appearances. Retain your gifts in clear awareness as you see the changelessness in the heart of change, the light of truth behind appearances. Be tempted not to let your gifts slip by and drift into forgetfulness, but hold them firmly in your mind by your attempts to think of them at least a minute as each quarter of the hour passes. Remind yourself how precious are these gifts with this reminder, which has power to hold your gifts in your awareness throughout the day. Forgiveness offers everything I want. Today I have accepted this as true. Today I have received the gifts of God. I love how this ends. This ends very much so with how we began our time together this afternoon, which is to really intentionally hold in awareness the different truth that it is that we're focusing on today. And for this stance. It is the lesson, forgiveness offers everything I want. Y'all, the very first step to emotional intelligence is the ability to be aware. And then from there, it's to be aware, to understand, to control, and then convey one's own emotions, and then the ability to handle interpersonal relationships with empathy and with wisdom. We cannot enter into relationships with the empathy and wisdom that it takes to hold a real, genuine, authentic, and healthy relationship if we haven't done the first step of being aware, understanding, controlling, and conveying our own emotions and what's going on inside of us. And y'all, this is where it's so fascinating, because when we really dig into the human intelligence, which is the heart of this show, is cultivating the human intelligence, the intellectual intelligence, emotional, spiritual, physical intelligences. The goal is that all four are cultivated. All four have a seat at the table. I like to think of it as they all have a seat in the boardroom. Each one comes forward with, hey, this is what I'm sensing. This is what I'm experiencing on an emotional level. Intellectually, this is what the data shows me in terms of maybe even the way that the body works and the science there as it relates to the physical aspect. And then even spiritually, what is more true than how my body is reacting or what I'm emotionally sensing right now? Even more true than what I intellectually know. The goal is that we're integrated: mind, body, soul, spirit. And so if just one of these intelligences is cultivated, we're a very lopsided individual. And so I've experienced people who are so highly intellectually cultivated that they actually are completely void and null of self, of like the soul in that regard, and even their own physical body. You know, they've cultivated their mind so much, but their body is failing them. I mean, look at Hawkins and these folks who have just been so incredibly brilliant that their body actually starts to deteriorate, and they are so disconnected from their physical body. And then you see people who are so spiritual that actually they're so spiritual that they can't really connect with those of us in kind of the physical world, because my dad puts it this way: I'm so heavenly minded of no earthly good. And then you see people who are so in touch with their emotions, but they can't hold a job. And so you see these levels and these different examples of what it looks like to over-index the cultivation of one intelligence rather than affording proper honor to each one of them and allowing for all four to be integrated and all four to have a seat at the table. And so even now, as we're looking at this lesson today, where it says, be tempted not to let your gifts slip by and drift into forgetfulness, but hold them firmly in your mind as you attempt to think of them at least an hour or on the hour. So it's holding it firmly in our mind and allowing the current coexisting thoughts that usually are the ones kind of at the helm of the ship, and being aware of what those current existing narratives are and then what the new ones should be, so that I can replace them, so that I can allow for a new and even better way of being to take its place. But we can only do that when we understand what has the past really done to me and formed me into thinking, into really believing, because every thought is based in a belief system. And so if I want to change the thought, I actually need to go to the root issue of the belief itself. And the belief was formed usually as a result of an experience that we had. Even if the experience was sitting in a church pew and the preacher is saying something, and you develop a belief and a belief system and a worldview at that moment. Or maybe you received really intense spankings and physical punishment, and you developed a belief system then based on that experience. Your thought based in a belief system based in an experience. And so if we ever want to change our thoughts, we actually need to kind of reverse engineer, okay, well, where did this even start with? And then if I want to ultimately heal from that past experience, only then can I seek to change the belief system to then change the thoughts that I have. And here's what's so wild is that the thoughts that we really do think about are usually what tend to happen. I said this story the other day, which just made me laugh so hard when it happened, and it was horrifying. I was on my way to meet a colleague, and I was actually late. I was pulling out of a hair appointment, and I was driving, and I was 3 minutes away. Just the hair appointment ran long, but I was like, man, what if I rear-ended this guy? I'd never met him. I met him on a Zoom meeting. I had taught this whole master class while I was in Berlin, and he lived in Virginia, and I came back to Virginia. And so I was meeting up with him, and I had this thought, what if I rear-ended him? And then I looked down for a second, rear-ended somebody. We pulled off the shoulder, and it was him. And I was just so dumbfounded. I was horrified and dumbfounded all at the same time. And it is really true, y'all. Joe Dispenza says this, and I know other folks have too. This concept of where you place your attention is where you place your energy. This is why thoughts really do have power, because what we think about, we're actually expending our energy to that thing, that which steals our attention, that which steals our focus, also steals our internal energy, and we're focusing on that very thing, even if we don't want it to happen. So perhaps the very secret to controlling our mind and taking every thought captive is to be aware of it and then entirely dismiss it, rather than even the dwelling on it. But this is where the fine line exists. What is the thought that we need to analyze and consider because it is deeply rooted in a belief system and there's an experience tied to it that I need to heal from? Versus what is the thought that I just need to completely dismiss and not give any energy to? Only you know that. Only you know that. And there's something helpful in terms of hearing from a friend or colleague or someone, maybe a mentor, to help us look in the mirror and say, hey, that thought actually has a lot more power over you than you may realize. But man, y'all, it is probably one of the most important things that we can consider. Realizing the difference between the thoughts which we need to completely dismiss, completely disregard, that is not life-giving. I'm just not going to give any energy to that, and thus not give any attention to it, versus, these are the thoughts that actually are at the helm of the ship. They're actually driving me, and I'm seeing the outcome in my physical experience around me because of these thoughts. So us just coming in and telling new thoughts that we want to think about, like this: forgiveness offers everything I want. That's so important. But what are the current belief systems and thoughts that we have around forgiveness to begin with? Are any of them needing a deeper dive into what was the experience associated with forgiveness or unforgiveness? For example, I know many people don't want to forgive because there's a mindset that if I forgive, then justice won't be delivered. And there's real experiences that they had around that. So for us to even introduce today's thought and today's lesson, forgiveness offers everything I want, it warns us to take a step back and consider, what are the thoughts, the pre-existing narratives, pre-existing belief systems I have around forgiveness and the lack thereof that could fundamentally prevent me from being able to even practice this in the first place. Y'all, so much of the time we sit and consider, okay, I'm gonna be this person, I'm gonna do this thing, I'm gonna go in this direction, but we don't recognize what's pre-existing in its stead right now. Why is it there? And is that something that I actually need to work through, move through, heal from, in order to then do away with that and introduce the new? Because otherwise we just end up spinning our wheels. And we end up getting disappointed with ourselves. Why can I not change? Because we're not getting to the root. We're not getting to the real genesis of what happened in the first place for why I'm acting this way, thinking this way, believing this way. Because usually the genesis, the root, is there for a reason. And usually it's because there was real pain, something that we moved through or experienced as children that need to be healed from. So if we want to see real change in our lives, it starts by usually going back to the beginning and taking real account for what happened. And from there, we can then seek to have real change. And this is the duality. This is why we also talk about, okay, well, but also, and the conjunction and is important here. Doing the work to go to the past, realize where is the past preventing me from change, and what are just some thoughts that come in that I just need to completely disregard, give no power to, give no mind to, because that's not who I want to be. The and for these two seemingly conflicting approaches to change is really, really important. And we need to have the wisdom and the discernment to know which one is needed in that moment. Do I need to go back and do the historical deep dive to uproot that thought process, that belief system, heal that initial experience? Or do I just need to not give any power to that thought and completely move forward? Because where we place our attention is where we place our energy. Both coexist, and both can be so incredibly important in real change. And so for us to even introduce this lesson at all, forgiveness offers everything I want. What do you believe about forgiveness? Going back to the very beginning of this, she writes, forgiveness lets the veil be lifted up that hides the face of Christ from those who look with unforgiving eyes upon the world. It lets you recognize the Son of God and clears your memory of all dead thoughts so that remembrance of your Father can arise across the threshold of your mind. I highlighted this as I was reading because this concept clears your memory of all dead thoughts. That blew my mind when I read that at first. Y'all, there's a lot of dead thoughts that we hold on to that are really, really damaging to us. There's somebody in my life that she's not very involved in my life. And at some point she will be. And I have had dreams about this woman literally showing up at my door and actually killing me. And I've also just had these like very strange thoughts pass through my mind. But I realized none of them are grounded in truth. They are all grounded in fear. And so that is the type of narrative that falls into this camp of, I'm just not going to give any oxygen to that thought. Take it, take a hold of it, and then let go and say, you're to hell with you. That's not how I'm going to spend my time thinking those thoughts. That's not how I'm going to spend my time. It's not life-giving. It's actually causing more fear in me. And thus that thought is actually going to have control over me. So I need to clear away that dead thought so that, and then this is on the other side of that. If then this. So the logical progression of if this, then that. So if I clear away the dead thoughts, then the truth can really be spoken. The truth can be the thing that lives in our minds and in our souls. So much of the reason why we do this work, to go back and trace down to the root, whether it's just taking that initial thought and doing away with it, or it's tracing down to the root. So much of the reason why we actually need to pay attention to the thoughts in our mind is because for every thought and every investment we make into it, it is going to yield an outcome. We talked about this a couple days ago about how we have return on investment. We talk about ROI in business. Where are we spending our marketing dollars? Where are we making financial investments in the stock market? Where are we making investments in a myriad of other ways? But we don't think about the investments of our thoughts. Where am I investing mental energy, cognitive energy, and what am I yielding for that investment? What's the return? Because for that one thought about that woman, man, it was a lot of fear was my return, and it was not healthy at all. And my dreams were disrupted as a result of that. So that was yielding a return that I want nothing to do with. So this concept, if this, then that, if you're investing cognitive, mental attention and energy in this one thought process, what are you yielding? What's the so that? So then, so what happens when we start investing mental energy in different areas of our life, into different thoughts? We are yielding returns. And so if we want to see real change, maybe we actually start needing to invest in other thought processes. And one of those, today's lesson, forgiveness lets you recognize the Son of God and clears your memory of all dead thoughts so that your remembrance of your Father can arise across the threshold of your mind. We talk on the show that there's kind of like two parts of our identity. Identity A is shared among every single one of us. And this part of our identity is effectively who God says that we are. We're loved. We are chosen. We're worthy. We are of intrinsic value no matter what. Intrinsically, our core of who we are worthy. We're loved. And that is the antithesis of so much of what the culture says. It's you have to earn it. You have to work for it. You're actually starting at a baseline of not loved, not belonging, not worthy. So what are you going to do about it? Versus, no, actually, that is at the core essence of who I am, is that I am loved. And so that's identity A, and that is shared across every single one of us. Should we so choose to walk accordingly? And then identity B, the second part of what constitutes you and me, is effectively what makes us so unique, our unique gifts and talents and strengths, our calling, our mission in life. And together, the amalgamation of those two is what makes for you and me. And so when we take the initial premise of this conversation of what are those thoughts that are driving and dictating our life, it's actually so important that we identify what are the thoughts that I have about my very being and my very core. Because my action and the way that I show up in the world with other people, towards God, towards even myself, is a direct ramification and reflection of my internal thought process, of my internal beliefs, and my internal experiences. Here's the thing that's so interesting. I said internal experiences, and the thing that's fascinating about that is that we can have a physical experience and draw a very different internal conclusion about that experience. And that happened a lot when we were growing up. For those of us who maybe didn't ever really communicate that with those that were our caretakers, how much of our external experiences as children formed an internal worldview, an internal belief system that we've never even really articulated to ourselves, much less anyone else. And so this show, the Knowing Show, especially the morning, I know we're not in the morning right now. I didn't have Wi-Fi this morning, but especially the morning, this is the time when we really identify what are those internal narratives that are at the helm of our ship, that are driving and operating in terms of making decisions on a business level, to hiring, to the way that we engage with partners, to even picking and choosing partners. Every single action, every single decision is a reflection of our internal belief system about ourselves and about the world at large. And so today's lesson, forgiveness offers everything I want. Are we willing to let go of those old, dead thoughts that really have been producing behaviors, belief systems, actions that aren't actually who we want to be at all? Because the thing about choosing to move away from those and learning new ones and adopting new belief systems and new thought patterns is that there's uncertainty there. It's unknown. What is going to happen if I start believing something new, acting according to something new? I remember this was about 4 years ago. Yeah, 4 years ago. I was going to see my former in-laws. And I was so excited. I loved my husband. I loved his family. And so I was going to see his brother and his wife and kids. And I was so excited to see them. But I told a friend, I was like, I feel like I've changed so much. And I'm so nervous about showing up with them because they knew old Christine effectively. And I've changed a lot, and I don't really know how to engage with them. And so I was afraid that my own process of changing and healing would actually be the cause for disconnection. I was afraid that me becoming more healthy and more healed and more in alignment with who I believe I was called to be in the first place, who I was created to be, would actually be the very thing that they wouldn't like. And so if you're like me and you really value people and you really value relationships, that's something that is worth considering. How are my relationships going to change as a result of me changing? And the thing is that they will probably, but man, if they love you, it's going to change for the better. It's going to be hard. It's a hard process to kind of reintroduce ourselves on the other side of healing, on the other side of change. But man, on the other side of that is the opportunity now for us to have a mutually beneficial relationship. Because if we're showing up in relationship and we actually are operating from a place that's frankly really not healthy, then we're really actually fundamentally disserving everyone in our life. I had been so oriented towards everyone around me that they never really engaged with authentic Christine. And so I was operating from this place of like a half charged battery. I was operating fundamentally from depletion itself rather than being able to give from this place of like, man, I'm so good. I've got overflow to give you. And this is what happens. You know, when people are like, oh, I feel like I have to walk on eggshells around you. That's usually a result of what happens when we're giving from a place of depletion. So when we turn the narrative around and we actually start operating from that truth of who we are, well, now the way that we engage in relationship, now I actually truly have something to give to you because I am operating from this place of no longer being addicted to everyone else's opinions and finding my value in what you say or what you think, to knowing my own worth and being able to give from the overflow of really love rather than operating in this relationship out of fear. That's what happens. When we're oriented towards everyone else defining our worth, it's fundamentally based out of fear. But when we're operating from this place of who does God say that I am? What is the truth about who I was created to be in the first place? Now I'm internally sourced. Now I can engage with you in freedom and love you freely and receive love freely. Where now it's not just this transaction exchange based in fear, but instead we're both operating, ideally both of us are operating from a place that's rooted and grounded in something that's eternal, our eternal identity and that which is spoken about us from our creator. So I am going to jump here in the chat. Good afternoon, my friends. My computer's out in the sun, so I'm hopeful it's not getting too hot. I am actually, you know what, I just realized that there's a lot here in the chat, and I want to save this. All right. Joseph Clift, hello. Cecile, good afternoon. I am Loic, hello. Egg, Man in the Hat, hello. Pickle, hello. Martin, 13J, hello. Old Cavity, hello. PC, Dead Metal, hello. Alex, hello. Good to see you. Wayne. There's a lot happening in the chat here that I got to catch up on. Alex, thank you. All right. Bank Top, hello. All right, I am going to save this. Okay, my computer is definitely going to overheat. I am going to move. I dropped my phone. I'm here in Sedona, and it's absolutely beautiful, but let me just move over here so that my computer's not in the sun. Okay. All right. I'm glad it survived as long as it did. Okay, hopefully, okay, I still have got signal. Let me go ahead and save the chat here because I like to be able to go back and check in with everybody. All right, let me save this. So beautiful in Sedona. I tried to share my turn my camera around earlier today, but I have a blur on my screen, so I can't show you. And I don't actually know how to undo the blurred background in Restream. So, all right, let me save this. Joseph, hi from London. I'm glad you're here. Kael, hello. Okay. Two-step. I love your title. Or the your handle. I went two-stepping a couple weeks ago, and it was so much fun. Wait, am I still frozen? I think I'm frozen. All right, I'll tabs on my computer because I'm afraid that My computer not. I'm losing signal with guys. So give me 1 second. I think my computer honestly just got in. Put this back. All right, I'm reloading. All right. Yay. All right, I think we're good now. All right, let me jump back into the chat. I just refreshed this, so hopefully I'm back. You know what, let me do this. I love being able to see the chat, but my computer overheated. All right, I'm logging in on my phone to see if you guys can even hear me. All right. No, let me. Okay. All right. Well, all that to say, I'm so bummed. I can't open the chat. I will be back online tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Eastern. No, 8 a.m. PST, 11 a.m. Eastern. I don't know what's happening with my stream. I hope I'm still with you guys, but I got disconnected, I think, because my computer overheated. So note to self, don't sit in the sunshine in Arizona while doing my stream. Also, I'm going to try to figure out tomorrow how to turn off my blurred background because it is so beautiful. I'm looking at all these flowers, all these roses, and I have like the gorgeous red rocks behind me here in Sedona. And so I want to be able to show you guys. But it's just a little, I think I overheated and I can't operate Restream right now with you guys. So all that to say, thank you so much for joining. I will see you again tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. PST. So I will see you tomorrow. Bye, y'all.